What if understanding evil required getting close to it? What if the psychiatrist sent to evaluate history's most notorious war criminals ended up forming a bond with them instead? And what if the horrifying truth was that these monsters were disturbingly, uncomfortably human? Welcome back to Depthline, where every story has depth. James Vanderbilt's Nuremberg arrives in theaters to mark the 80th anniversary of the most consequential war crimes trial in human history. This isn't your typical courtroom drama filled with triumphant speeches and moral clarity. Instead, Vanderbilt gives us something far more disturbing: a psychological battle between American psychiatrist Douglas Kelley, played by Rami Malek in one of his finest performances, and Hermann Göring, Hitler's second-in-command, brought to chilling life by Russell Crowe. Based on Jack L. High's 2013 book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, the film explores the terrifying reality that evil doesn't always look monstrous. Sometimes it looks like a charming, intelligent man who loves his wife and daughter. The supporting cast includes Michael Shannon as Supreme Court Justice, Robert H. Jackson, Richard E. Grant as British prosecutor, Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, and Leo Woodall as Sergeant Howie Trieste, a Jewish translator searching for his sister among the survivors. This is the story of how the world tried to define crimes against humanity for the first time, and how one man became dangerously obsessed with understanding the nature of evil itself. The film opens in 1945, just months after Nazi Germany's defeat. Europe lies in ruins, millions are dead, and the full scope of the Holocaust is only beginning to emerge as Allied forces liberate concentration camps. The world is demanding justice, but nobody knows exactly what that means. Should the surviving Nazi leadership simply be executed as war criminals have been throughout history, or should there be trials that establish new principles of international law? Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson convinces President Harry Truman's administration to pursue trials rather than summary executions. Jackson argues that the world needs to see these men held accountable through a legal process, not revenge killings. He wants to establish that certain acts are crimes against humanity regardless of whether a nation signed a specific treaty, that following orders is not an absolute defense for atrocities, and that leaders can be held personally responsible for the actions of their regimes. The Allies choose Nuremberg, Germany, as the location for these unprecedented trials. It's a deliberate choice, loaded with symbolism, because Nuremberg was the ceremonial birthplace of the Nazi Party and the site of massive propaganda rallies that Hitler used to consolidate his power. Now it will be where his regime faces judgment. Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Kelley arrives with a mission: evaluate the imprisoned Nazi leadership and determine their mental competence. Kelley, a Berkeley-trained psychiatrist, sees an opportunity not only to serve history, but to study evil at its source. He hopes to identify psychological traits behind genocide, and perhaps write a bestseller about it one day. Prison Commandant Colonel Burton Andrus, played by John Slattery, maintains rigid security. The prisoners are held under 24/7 surveillance in individual cells to prevent suicides. Andrus sees them only as dangerous criminals to be kept alive long enough to be executed. Kelley's approach is completely different. He begins interviewing the prisoners one by one, starting with the highest-ranking Nazi still alive, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring. Before the war, Göring was Hitler's designated successor, commander of the Luftwaffe, and one of the primary architects of Nazi Germany's military strategy. Now he's overweight, sick with morphine addiction, and facing certain death. The relationship between Kelley and Göring forms the emotional and psychological center of the film. Their first meeting establishes the dynamic that will define everything that follows. Göring is surprisingly charming, witty, and intelligent. He speaks multiple languages fluently, discusses art and culture with genuine knowledge, and displays none of the ranting fanaticism associated with Nazi propaganda. Russell Crowe learned German specifically for this role, and more than half his dialogue is in that language, adding authenticity to scenes where Göring switches between languages to control conversations. Kelley finds himself fascinated against his better judgment. Göring is cooperative, even helpful, assisting Kelley in examining other prisoners like Rudolf Hess, Hitler's former deputy, who feigns amnesia to avoid responsibility. In exchange for this cooperation, Göring asks only small favors: the ability to write letters to his wife Emmy and young daughter Edda. Kelley becomes a courier for these letters, developing a rapport not just with Göring, but with his family. But there's another layer to this relationship that Kelley doesn't immediately recognize. Supreme Court Justice Jackson approaches the psychiatrist privately and asks him to report on the prisoner's legal defense strategies. This places Kelley in an impossible ethical position. He's supposed to be their evaluator, maintaining professional distance, but he's also being asked to spy on them for the prosecution. Kelley agrees, justifying it as service to justice. But the line between psychiatrist and informant becomes increasingly blurred. The balance shifts when Robert Ley, the fanatical head of the German Labor Front, kills himself in his cell. Furious, Andrus brings in a second psychiatrist, Captain Gustave Gilbert. Gilbert sees the defendants not as subjects to study, but as moral atrocities in human form. His presence creates a philosophical clash. Can one understand evil without empathizing with it? Is attempting to understand monsters a moral compromise or a scientific necessity? Kelley seeks insights. Gilbert seeks judgment. Meanwhile, Sergeant Howie Trieste, a Jewish-American translator, searches desperately for his sister among concentration camp survivors. His quiet anguish adds emotional weight, grounding the film in the real human cost of the crimes being prosecuted. The trials begin in November 1945. Judges from the US, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union hear 4 unprecedented charges: crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and conspiracy. The prosecution must not only prove that atrocities occurred, but that they represent violations of universal law. Michael Shannon plays Jackson as a man nearly crushed by the responsibility of shaping global justice. He must prove genocide was systematic and deliberate while laying foundations for future international courts. Göring treats the trial as theater. He is the only defendant who fully engages, using rhetoric, technicalities, and charisma to shape the narrative. He insists he was simply a loyal soldier serving his country. Crowe's performance makes clear how such a man commanded power. Everything changes with Exhibit 230, the documentary filmed during the liberation of the camps. The courtroom watches the horrifying footage: mass graves, skeletal survivors, industrialized death. Even the defendants appear shaken. Vanderbilt uses real archival footage, refusing to sanitize the truth. Its impact is devastating. Historically, Göring reportedly reacted with discomfort. In the film, he dismisses it as fabricated, a chilling precursor to modern conspiracy rhetoric. Jackson struggles to break Göring's defense, but Kelley, through months of interviews, uncovers Göring's flaw: unwavering loyalty to Hitler. Even after defeat, Göring cannot denounce the Führer. Jackson weaponizes this. Under cross-examination, he traps Göring into declaring that he remains loyal to Hitler and would follow his orders even now. This destroys Göring's argument that he was merely obeying lawful authority. He exposes himself as an unrepentant architect of genocide. The courtroom erupts. Other defendants realize their strategy, blaming Hitler and claiming ignorance, has collapsed. Göring has doomed them. The verdicts follow. 12 men sentenced to death, including Göring. Others receive sentences ranging from 10 years to life. 3 are acquitted. But Göring has one last act of defiance. Hours before execution, he commits suicide by cyanide, leaving the Allies furious. The source of the poison remains debated, but the film implies Kelley may have been involved, hinting at their dangerously complicated bond. Kelley is left haunted. In his real memoir, 22 Cells in Nuremberg, he concluded that the Nazi leaders were psychologically normal, horrifyingly normal. They were not insane or uniquely monstrous. They were ordinary humans shaped by circumstances, ideology, and power. This conclusion terrifies him. If the perpetrators were normal, then such evil could emerge anywhere. Trieste eventually learns that his sister survived, a rare moment of hope a reminder of resilience amid devastation. Text cards reveal the fates of the main figures. Kelley fell into alcoholism, convinced that another Nazi-like regime could rise. His warnings were largely ignored. In 1958, he committed suicide by ingesting cyanide, the same method Göring used. The parallel is disturbing and deliberate, suggesting evil's shadow followed him long after Nuremberg. Justice Jackson's work laid the foundation for all future war crimes tribunals, influencing the International Criminal Court and the global understanding that leaders can be held accountable for crimes against humanity. The Nuremberg Trials established the revolutionary idea that certain crimes violate a law higher than any nation, and that individuals cannot hide behind orders. Imperfect and influenced by geopolitics, the trials nevertheless became humanity's first serious attempt to define and prosecute atrocities on a global scale. Nuremberg refuses comfort or triumph. Vanderbilt presents justice as a messy, human attempt to confront unprecedented evil. The film insists that evil does not always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it speaks politely, smiles warmly, and charms you, and only later reveals the abyss within. Russell Crowe's Göring is charismatic and repulsive at once. Malek's Kelley becomes a man undone by his own search for understanding. Their dynamic becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of getting too close to the darkness you're trying to analyze. Released 80 years after the trials, the film feels urgently relevant. In an era of rising authoritarianism, genocide denial, and attacks on global institutions, Nuremberg reminds us why these trials mattered, and why remembering them still does. If this breakdown left you thinking about justice, accountability, and the nature of evil, subscribe to Depthline for weekly deep dive analyses. Share your thoughts on whether understanding evil requires getting close to it. And remember, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next breakdown.